This is a 2024 Jaguar F Type R75, but what's the point in me introducing it when it can introduce itself? To look at, the F Type R75 is a thing of beauty. The iconic facelift shape of the F Type was an instant hit when it debuted 10 years ago, and it remains as adored as ever. Its wide stature and sculpted bodywork ensure that it looks sleek yet aggressive. And, of course, having a clamshell bonnet is a pretty cool touch. Dropping down into the cabin of the F-Type R75, and it's immediately clear just how classy of a cabin this is. Either every surface is lovely upholstery or just really nice material. As an example, we have this beautifully leather-wrapped steering wheel in front of us, albeit rather large, but adds to the GT theme of the F-Type. Behind it, we have these shift paddles which feel really nice to use. They're still plastic, but nice plastic, so they feel quite good in your hands. The rest of the controls are all really easy to reach, so this is a very driver-centric car. What I mean by that is everything basically in this car is this side. So we have our climate control, we have our noisy exhaust button, which of course you're going to hit every single time you get in the car. We have our gearbox here, we have our dynamic driving mode or rain mode, whichever one you want to use at the time, and then the volume knob for the infotainment, and really that's about it as far as controls go. It's a really easy car to learn. It's very intuitive, very simple, but it works really well. And of course we have Apple CarPlay up front, which means it should be future-proof, albeit you do need to plug your phone in, which is under my arm here. So a little bit annoying, would be nice to have wireless Apple CarPlay, but so be it. These seats are fantastically comfortable. I do love the Jaguar emblem that we have in the headrest, and of course the Jaguar lettering across the vent. You will see the word either Jaguar, R, or the 75 logo absolutely everywhere on this car. You know, they've gone to great lengths to make sure you know exactly what car you're in. Now, storage-wise, it's really not that fantastic. I mean, the boot is, I would say, quite small, considering the GT nature of this car. I mean, I've thrown my camera gear in and it's pretty much filled it up. It feels like, almost like it's an MX-5, just bigger, if you know what I mean. So it's the same recipe. It's a two-seater. There's not a lot of luggage space. It's a very selfish car, so it's all about the driver. Just a little bit bigger in every single regard. All right, so now it's time to go for a drive in the F-Type R75. And because it would be rude not to, I'm about to roll on to a 100k an hour road. This does 0 to 100 in 3.7 seconds. So we should probably see what that's like. Now, before I do, I should say that I don't get to drive supercars every day or anything like that. So I may end up making some noises that are cringy at best and going to get me struck off YouTube at worst. Here we go. That is proper naughty. That's ridiculous. Okay, so that's impressive and fun. And that brings up numbers that are going to get you in trouble very quickly. Right, so let's just calm things down and have a bit of a chat about this car. So we have 423 kilowatts of power on tap, which is around 560 horsepower, I think. And we have 700 newton meters of torque. We've got all-wheel drive, so really none of that power or torque is wasted. It just sends you forward in a way that is extremely fun. It's also effortless. So you're just driving along, and because there's that much torque everywhere, it's just such a good cruiser. But then, of course, moments like that just then, it can be a hell of a lot of fun as well. I mean, that is exhilarating. It's just a shame that I don't have access to a track to be able to enjoy it even more. Land Rover, help us out. Suspension-wise, I think it's fantastic. Unless you find yourself on a road that is really out of the ordinary, the Jag does a fantastic job of soaking up lumps, bumps and jumps. Overall, it's been extremely comfortable on inner city driving, and then on highways, on these B roads where they're not the best, it does a great job of ironing as much out as it can. Now, one of the elephants in the room is the size of this car. I mean, this thing is wide. My camera is well out of reach, and this is just a two-seater. Here in Australia, it takes up a fair chunk of the road. So my first drive home with the car was a little bit nerve-wracking, to say the least, because along the highway I was taking up the entire lane, which isn't great when people are ogling the car and wanting to check it out, and inevitably you're drifting into your lane. I'm sure it's something that you get used to over time, like anything, but at the moment it just feels really large. I'm very much aware of the size of the F-Type. Now, what I'm happy to say is that its weight seems to disappear quite well, until you start to push it a little bit harder than you probably should. Normal driving or spirited driving, it does a great job of hiding its mass. I mean, it's not far off 2 ton, so she's a big girl, but she knows how to dance. It's yet another hot as hell day here in Australia, and one of the options that I'm glad this car has is the ventilated front seats. They are a game changer. I think they're around $1,000 or $2,000 cost option, but if you're buying something like this, I mean, you're already above 300,000. Yeah, you heard that right. You're above 300,000, so you might as well tick it and just waft along in absolute comfort. As far as visibility goes, it's actually not too bad. The car is very wide, so knowing where that front corner is challenging. But once you're up and moving, even though the rear aperture is quite small, it's quite usable. We do have a bit of a blind spot, I think, coming from an MX-5 RF, because that's exactly where my blind spot is. I've just gotten used to it, so I can drive around it, no problem. If it is something that you're a little bit worried about, we do have blind spot monitoring, we have lane departure warning, we have all the fruit to make sure that you can be safe and sound on the road. We have a reversing camera as well, which isn't too bad. It's not very high res, but that seems to be the go these days. It does a good enough job. Now I want to talk about this gearbox, because whilst I'm a manual snob, I have to say this does a great job. When you want to pull down a gear, it listens, and then as you'll hear, on upshifts, it is an absolute riot. I mean, I love the bark as it changes up gear. Granted, I understand that generations previous to this of the F-Type are louder, more snarly, more angry. Emissions have kind of forced Jaguar's hand to calm things down a touch, which is a little bit of a shame, but then again, I remember hearing journos saying that it was a little bit too much sometimes, so perhaps Jag have struck a beautiful middle ground. It also means that I think if you were to buy this car, you're probably going to take it to the exhaust shop and make it nice and loud so it does bark and snarl all the time. I mean, it is just a glorious sound. So because we have a supercharged V8 up front that makes a glorious sound, we are going to drink through fuel. There's no getting around that. I think the people that buy these cars aren't going to care about that. It's just par of the course. But what I will say is that if you drive with a light right foot, you can actually get the fuel economy into single digits, which I think is really impressive. I can't imagine too many people are going to actually bother doing that buy this, but the fact that you can do it if you need to is nice. Now, as we drive along, let's discuss numbers. So 423 kilowatts, 700 newton meters of torque, 0 to 100 in 3.7 seconds. All very impressive numbers. But let's get to the eye-watering one. This particular spec that I'm driving today is $290,000 before on-roads, which means it's going to be over 300,000 Australian dollars by the time the keys are in your hot little hand. Now, the options list, well, they read basically like a car catalogue in their own. If you deem that these brakes aren't good enough, which by the way they are, you can option carbon ceramics. That will cost you 21,000 Australian dollars, which just blows my mind. I mean, I'm sure they're fantastic and all, but if this is meant to be a GT and, say, I guess a low maintenance car, so to speak, throwing a set of 21k carbon ceramics on there, that's spicy. These seats are so comfortable, which allows the F-Type to wear that GT badge with honour. I do love the fact though that if you decide to hustle this thing along, she will get up and boogie. Certainly no slouch, and whilst it's probably not a 10/10ths car, certainly once you get 8, maybe 9, 8/10ths, let's be honest, it's so rewarding. I expected it to wash out coming into some of the tighter corners being all-wheel drive, being 1,800 kilos, but it hasn't done that once. It's gone exactly where I've turned the wheel. I don't really have to think about my inputs all that much. It just goes exactly where I want it to. It feels fairly agile. I mean, I wouldn't say it's razor edge or anything like that, but she does move quite a lot, but in a way that's controllable, in a way that gives you confidence. It definitely makes you think that you're a much better driver than you probably really are. And I don't want to get all emotional and lean into the cliche about, oh, petrol engines are dying out and, you know, soon it's going to be all EVs and it's all boring and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's true. In only a couple of years, Jag is going to be an EV only producer, but I have to say that the lads and lasses at Birmingham, they have done a fantastic job of giving the F-Type the send-off it deserved. After all, this R75 edition, it's meant as a swan song for the F-Type. It's a celebration of 10 years of the Jag F-Type. It's also a celebration of 75 years of sports cars from Jaguar, hence the number 75. And whilst us Aussies do enjoy taking the piss out of the Brits more often than not, I think we all have to acknowledge the fact that on this one, they've got it right. So all those people at Birmingham making these things, thank you. So what do you think of the F-Type R75? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, a massive thank you to Exhaust Notes Australia for giving me the chance to live with this F-Type R75 for a week. Ever since the F-Type came out 10 years ago, it's been a dream of mine to experience one, and this has absolutely exceeded my expectations. So make sure you head over to Exhaust Notes Australia's website, see my written review, and see plenty of other awesome reviews as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.